girl who became a star. Long ago, in the heart of a vast and fertile valley, there was a village known as Usoma. It was surrounded by rivers that sparkled like silver under the sun, and the people lived in harmony with nature. In this village, a baby girl was born on the night of a rare celestial event. The stars shone brighter than ever, and the elders of the village declared her arrival a blessing from the gods. They named her Nia, which meant purpose, for they believed she was destined for greatness. Nia grew up under the watchful eyes of her loving parents, who were known for their kindness. Her mother was a healer, and her father a farmer, both respected for their generosity and wisdom. From a young age, Nia displayed a gentle heart, always eager to help those in need. Whether it was tending to the elders or caring for animals, Nia's compassion radiated through her every action. As Nia grew older, her heart remained as kind as ever. One day, as she wandered through the village, she heard the faint cries of a small boy who had fallen while gathering fruit. His ankle was swollen, and he couldn't stand. Without hesitation, Nia ran to his side. Using the herbs her mother had taught her about, she bandaged his ankle and stayed with him until his tears turned to laughter. Word of Nia's act spread, and soon the village began to notice her selflessness. Despite being just a child, Nia's kindness touched every corner of Usoma. She often visited the elderly, carrying baskets of food and sharing stories that made them smile. Her presence was like a gentle breeze on a hot day, comforting and refreshing. The villagers began to believe that Nia was more than just a girl. Some whispered that she had the spirit of a goddess within her. One year, the rains did not come as expected. The rivers that once overflowed with life began to dry up, and the crops withered under the scorching sun. The village of Usoma faced a severe drought, and its people grew anxious. Many began to lose hope, fearing that the gods had abandoned them. Even the village elders, who had always been full of wisdom, had no solution. But Nia did not lose hope. She saw the worry in her parents' eyes and felt the weight of the village's despair. Determined to help, she began to seek guidance from the forest. Every day, Nia would venture into the woods, searching for answers. She would sit by the oldest tree, praying to the spirits of nature and the gods, asking for help for her village. One evening, after hours of searching, Nia grew tired and fell asleep. She saw the word tree. In her dreams, a vision appeared to her. A shimmering figure, draped in light, emerged from the shadows of the forest. It was the goddess of the stars, Marimba. Her voice was soft, like the whisper of the wind, but carried great power. "Nia," she said, "you have a heart full of kindness, and for this, I will show you a way to save your village." The goddess told Nia of a sacred spring deep in the mountains that would bring life back to the village's lands. But there was a catch. Only one with a pure heart could find it. When Nia awoke, she felt a deep sense of purpose. She knew that the gods had given her a way to help her people, and she would do everything in her power to follow through. Nia returned to the village and told her parents about the vision she had. At first, they were hesitant. The mountains were dangerous, and the journey was long. But they knew their daughter's heart, and they trusted her determination. They gave her their blessings, and with a small pouch of food and herbs, Nia set off on her journey to find the sacred spring. As she traveled through the forest and up the rocky hills, Nia encountered many challenges. The path was steep, and the air grew colder with every step. But she never wavered. Her thoughts focused on her village and the hope of saving them from drought. The birds and animals seemed to sense her mission, and they often led her through the most treacherous parts of the journey. After several days of traveling, Nia came across a large, winding river that blocked her path. As she pondered how to cross it, a figure appeared before her. It was a trickster spirit, known for playing games with travelers. The trickster smiled mischievously and said, "To cross the river, you must answer my riddle. Fail, and you shall be lost forever in the waters." Nia, though tired, was unafraid. The trickster posed a riddle about the stars and the moon, and Nia, using the wisdom she had learned from her mother and the elders, answered correctly. The trickster, impressed by her knowledge and purity of heart, allowed her to cross safely. But as she left, he whispered, "Beware, young one, for the path ahead will test not only your body, but your spirit." Days passed, and Nia finally reached the foot of the great mountain where the sacred spring was said to reside. The mountain was steep and shrouded in mist, making it difficult to see the path. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and Nia felt a chill run down her spine. She could sense that the mountain was not like the others she had climbed. It was a place of great power, and she knew that her final test lay ahead. With each step, the weight of the mountain seemed to press down on her.
We would face them together.
The path became narrow, and the rocks were sharp beneath her feet.
Was a turning point in our
But
lives.
Nia pushed forward, her mind focused on the vision she had received and the village that needed her. The higher she climbed, the more she felt a strange energy pulling her closer to her destination. After what felt like an eternity, Nia finally reached the top of the mountain. There, hidden among the rocks, was the sacred spring. The water shimmered with an ethereal glow, and the air around it was warm and comforting. Nia knelt beside the spring, her heart filled with gratitude. She had made it. With a small wooden flask, she carefully collected the water, knowing that this was the key to saving her village. As she prepared to leave, the voice of the goddess Marimba echoed in her ears once more. "You have done well, Nia. Your heart is pure, and because of this, you have found the spring. But remember, kindness is not a single act, but a way of life. Continue to serve others, and the stars will forever watch over you." Nia began her journey back to the village, holding the flask of sacred water close to her heart. The descent down the mountain was no easier than the climb, but Nia felt a lightness in her step, as if the gods were guiding her. Along the way, the animals of the forest greeted her. Birds sang in the trees, and even the wind seemed to carry her gently down the steep path. She knew her village's future rested in her hands, and this gave her strength. When she finally reached the edge of Usoma, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the fields. The villagers had gathered in the square, their faces tired and anxious. As Nia approached, holding the glowing flask, a collective gasp arose. "Nia has returned," someone shouted, and soon the entire village surrounded her. The elders stepped forward, their eyes wide with amazement as they beheld the magical water she had brought. The village gathered at the dry riverbed where the fields once flourished. With a quiet prayer, Nia poured the sacred water into the ground, watching as it seeped into the earth. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a deep rumble echoed beneath their feet. Suddenly, from the very spot where the water had touched, a stream of clear, sparkling water burst forth, filling the riverbed and spreading through the land. The villagers cheered, their spirits lifted as they watched the once barren earth turn green before their eyes. The crops that had withered began to sprout again, and the river returned, flowing strong and full of life. The village elders proclaimed Nia a hero, blessed by the gods. But Nia, ever humble, simply smiled and said, "The gods have heard our prayers. It is their blessing, not mine, that brings life back to Usoma." In celebration of the village's revival, the people of Usoma decided to hold a grand festival. It would be a time of gratitude to the gods and a way to honor Nia's bravery. The village square was decorated with colorful fabrics, and everyone brought food to share. There were drums, dancing, and laughter in every corner. The night was filled with music, as villagers sang songs of thanks to the gods who had saved them. Nia was the guest of honor, but she spent most of the evening quietly helping with preparations, ensuring that everyone had enough to eat and drink. When the elders asked her to speak, she stood before the crowd and said, "We are all blessed when we help each other. This water, this life, belongs to us all. Let us never forget that together we are stronger." Her words touched the hearts of everyone there, and from that day forward, the village vowed to live in harmony, sharing their blessings with one another. As the weeks passed, life in Usoma returned to normal. The fields were once again full of crops, the river flowed steadily, and the people no longer feared the drought. However, far away in the mountains, a dark force was stirring. The trickster spirit who had tested Nia during her journey had not forgotten her. Though Nia had passed his riddle, the trickster was displeased that she had succeeded in her quest. He
The
resented
Brave Hunter
gods'
and the
favor
Magical
upon
Drum.
her and began
Long
plotting
ago,
to test
in a
her
village
further.
nestled deep
One
within the
day,
lush
while
green
Nia was
forests of
gathering
Africa,
herbs by the river, a strange wind began to blow. The trees rustled and the sky darkened. Nia sensed something was wrong. She had felt this energy before. It was the presence of the trickster. Though she remained calm, she knew that a new challenge was coming, one that might not be so easily overcome. The next morning, Naya woke to the sound of frantic voices. She rushed to the river to find the villagers gathered in confusion. The river, which had been flowing steadily for weeks, was beginning to dry up again. The once lush fields were slowly turning brown, and the fear of drought returned to the hearts of the people. "How can this be?" the elders asked. "The gods blessed us with water. Why has it begun to disappear?" Nia remained silent for a moment, her mind racing. She knew that this was no natural event. It was the work of the trickster spirit. But she also knew that revealing this to the villagers might cause fear and panic. Instead, she stepped forward and said, "I will seek the gods once more. This is a test of our faith and our unity. We must remain strong, and together, we will find a way." After gathering her courage, Nia decided to seek the wisdom of the gods at the Sky Temple, a sacred place at the highest peak of the mountains. It was said that only those with pure hearts could make the journey and speak directly to the gods. The path was dangerous, filled with trials meant to test the strength and resolve of anyone who dared to climb. Before leaving, Nia visited her parents and the village elders to tell them of her plan. Her mother, though worried, gave her a bundle of protective herbs, while her father placed a woven bracelet around her wrist, a symbol of their family's love and support. "Remember, Nia," he said, "you carry the hopes of our village with you, but never forget that your kindness is your greatest strength." As Nia began her ascent toward the Sky Temple, the winds grew stronger, howling through the mountains and pushing her back with every step. She realized that this was no ordinary wind. It was the spirit of the mountain itself, testing her resolve. Despite the fierce gusts, Nia pressed on, her feet steady and her heart determined. She knew that turning back was not an option. At the steepest point of the climb, the wind spirit appeared before her in the form of a great eagle. "Why do you seek the gods?" it asked, its voice booming like thunder. "Have they not already granted your village a blessing?" Nia replied calmly. "The gods' blessings are not permanent. They must be earned and nurtured, just as the river must flow. I seek their guidance, not for myself, but for the sake of my people." Impressed by her selflessness, the wind spirit allowed her to pass, clearing the skies and guiding her safely to the entrance of the Sky Temple. Naya entered the Sky Temple, a magnificent place carved into the mountain itself, with walls that shimmered like the night sky. At the center of the temple was a great pool of water, reflecting the heavens above. Nia knelt beside it and prayed, her heart full of hope and concern for her village. As she prayed, the water began to ripple, and from its depths, the voice of the gods echoed. "Nia, you have proven yourself time and again," the gods said. "Your kindness and strength have brought you here, but the trickster spirit grows jealous of your light. He seeks to test you, to take away the blessings we have bestowed upon your people. But fear not, for we shall grant you the wisdom to face this challenge. Return to your village, and you will find the answer within your heart." Nia descended from the Sky Temple, her heart filled with new determination. The gods had promised her the wisdom to face the challenges ahead, but as she returned to Usoma, she knew that the trickster spirit would not make it easy. The village welcomed her back with anxious hearts, their eyes full of hope. They trusted her, but the river continued to dry, and fear was creeping into their spirits. That night, as Nia sat by the now shrinking river, a familiar gust of wind stirred the trees. Out of the shadows appeared the trickster spirit, his mischievous smile as wide as ever. "So you have returned, little one," he said mockingly. "But your precious water is vanishing once more. What will you do now?" Nia stood tall, her eyes steady. "I will not play your games," she said calmly. "The gods are with me, and my heart remains pure. You cannot take away what was given out of kindness." The trickster narrowed his eyes, but he did not disappear. Instead, he lingered, watching, waiting for her next move. The next few days were difficult for Nia. Though she held the wisdom of the gods within her heart, the villagers grew more restless as the water continued to recede. Some began to lose faith, wondering if Nia's journey to the Sky Temple had truly been blessed. Doubt filled the air, and Nia found herself struggling to keep her own heart strong. But Nia knew the gods had given her the tools she needed. Patience, she whispered to herself, recalling the lesson from the wind spirit. The answer is within. She spent long hours meditating by the river, her hands on the earth, feeling the heartbeat of the land beneath her. Slowly, she began to understand. The trickster's power came from doubt and fear. As long as the village was divided, the trickster could continue to play his games. She needed to remind her people of their strength, their unity, and most importantly, their kindness. Nia decided to call a meeting of the village elders, the wise men and women who had seen many seasons of Usoma's prosperity and hardship. As they gathered in the village square, their faces showed the deep lines of concern that had grown over the past weeks. Nia, one of the elders said gently, "We believe in your heart, but the people are frightened. What shall we do if the water does not return?" Nia looked at each elder, her mind racing. Then she spoke. "Our strength is not only in the water that flows, but in the kindness we show one another. The trickster feeds on our fear. If we stand together, if we show that our hearts remain pure, we can overcome his games. We must act with the same generosity that brought the water to us before. Only then will we see the return of our blessings." The elders nodded slowly, their faith in Nia renewed. They agreed to spread her message throughout the village, calling on everyone to help each other, to remain strong, and to banish fear from their hearts. Words spread through Usoma like a gentle breeze. The villagers, though still uncertain, began to act upon Nia's message. Farmers shared their crops with those whose land had suffered the most. The healers, like Nia's mother, worked tirelessly to ensure no one went without medicine or care. Even the children played their part, fetching water from the small pools that remained, carrying it to the homes of the elderly. As the days passed, something miraculous began to happen. Though the river was still low, the crops that had started to wither began to show signs of life. The trees by the river grew green once again, their leaves whispering secrets of hope. The trickster spirit, who had been watching in the shadows, grew frustrated. He had expected the villagers to turn on one another, but instead, they were growing stronger. Seeing that his plan to cause fear had failed, the trickster decided to play a more dangerous game. One evening, as the village celebrated the small revival of their crops, a heavy storm suddenly swept in. Lightning cracked across the sky, and the wind howled fiercely, bending trees and threatening to tear the roofs from homes. The river, which had been drying up, now threatened to overflow, and the villagers panicked. The trickster had sent the storm, hoping to break their spirit once more. But Nia stood firm. As the storm raged, she rallied the villagers, urging them to take shelter and protect one another. "Do not fear," she shouted over the roar of the wind. "This is a test, but we are stronger together." The villagers heeded her call, and soon they were working as one to save their homes and each other from the storm's fury. In the heart of the storm, Nia stood alone by the river's edge, her face turned to the sky. She knew the trickster was watching, waiting for her to falter. But she would not give him that satisfaction. Closing her eyes, Nia called upon the gods. "Marimba, goddess of the stars, hear me," she whispered. "Grant me the strength to protect my people, to end this storm, and show the trickster that we will not be defeated." As if in answer to her prayer, the sky above her cleared momentarily, and a single star shone brightly through the dark clouds. The storm began to slow, the winds weakening. The river, though high, did not overflow. Nia smiled, knowing that the gods were with her. The trickster's power was waning, and soon his games would come to an end. The next morning, as the villagers emerged from their homes, relieved that the storm had passed, a stranger appeared at the edge of the village. He was tall and cloaked in a deep blue robe that shimmered like the night sky. His eyes glowed with a strange light, and the villagers, though wary, felt an odd sense of calm in his presence. Nia approached the stranger cautiously. "Who are you?" she asked, sensing that this was no ordinary traveler. The man smiled, his eyes twinkling like stars. "I have come to see the one who has the heart of a goddess," he said softly. "You, Nia, have shown the gods and your people the true power of kindness. But your journey is far from over. The trickster has been weakened, but he is not defeated. You must prepare for one final challenge." Nia listened closely as the stranger continued, his voice as gentle as the evening breeze. "The trickster spirit will not stop until he breaks your spirit or claims the blessings of the gods for himself. His greatest weapon is not storms or droughts, but doubt. If you lose faith in yourself, he will win. But if you hold fast to the strength within you, if you keep your heart pure, you will prevail. With that, the stranger handed Nia a small, glowing stone. This is a gift from the stars. It will guide you when all seems lost. Trust in it, and trust in yourself. As suddenly as he had appeared, the stranger vanished, leaving Nia with a renewed sense of purpose. She clutched the stone tightly, knowing that the final battle with the trickster was approaching, and that only by remaining true to herself could she protect her people. In the days following the stranger's visit, the village of Usoma found a brief moment of peace. The river flowed steadily once again, and the crops grew greener than they had in years. The villagers, encouraged by Nia's leadership, felt hopeful. But Nia could sense that this calm was only temporary. The trickster had not been defeated, merely biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Nia kept the glowing stone close to her, feeling its warmth in her hand. At night, she would stare up at the stars, wondering what the final test would be. She remembered the stranger's words. Doubt is the trickster's greatest weapon. She knew that whatever challenge lay ahead would not be a test of physical strength, but of faith and courage. She began to prepare herself mentally, knowing that the real battle would take place within her heart. As the days passed, Nia noticed small changes in the village. Though the river was full and the crops flourished, there were whispers of unease among the people. Some villagers, remembering the drought and the storm, began to fear that another disaster was on the horizon. Others doubted that Nia could continue to protect them from the trickster's power. The trickster's influence, though unseen, was creeping back into their hearts. Nia tried to reassure them, reminding everyone of the kindness and unity that had saved the village before. But she could see the seeds of doubt taking root. She knew the trickster was working through their fears, using their uncertainty to weaken their resolve. The elders gathered with her, sharing their concerns, but Nia stood firm. "We must not let fear control us," she said. "The trickster thrives on doubt. We must remain united and trust in one another." One morning, as Nia woke to begin her daily tasks, she reached for the glowing stone given to her by the mysterious stranger. But to her shock, it was gone. Panic filled her heart as she searched every corner of her hut, but the stone had vanished without a trace. Nia felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. The stone had been her guide, her connection to the stars and the gods. Without it, she felt lost. She sat quietly, trying to calm the fear rising inside her. This, she realized, was the trickster's doing. He had stolen the stone to shake her confidence, to make her doubt herself. Nia closed her eyes, remembering the words of the stranger. Trust in the stone, but more importantly, trust in yourself. The stone was gone, but her faith remained. She had to find strength within herself, just as she had done on her journey to the Sky Temple. Later that day, Nia ventured out to the forest, hoping to clear her mind and seek guidance from nature. As she wandered through the trees, she heard a faint voice calling her name. It was soft at first, but grew louder as she followed the sound. Soon, she found herself standing at the edge of a deep ravine, the voice echoing from the bottom. "Nia, come closer," it beckoned. Without thinking, Nia took a step forward, but then stopped. Something wasn't right. The voice, though familiar, had an unsettling tone. Nia looked down into the ravine and saw a shimmer of light, like the glow of the missing starstone. The trickster was trying to lure her in. She stepped back, realizing this was another of his tricks, designed to make her lose faith in her instincts. "I will not be fooled," she said aloud. "Your games have no power over me." Returning to the village, Nia gathered the elders and the people of Usoma. She told them of the trickster's latest attempt to deceive her and warned them that they, too, might face his tricks. "He seeks to divide us," she said, "to make us doubt ourselves and each other. But we are stronger than his illusions. We have kindness in our hearts, and we must hold on to that, no matter what." Her words resonated deeply with the villagers. They remembered the many times Nia had led them through hardship, and their faith in her and in themselves began to return. They agreed to stand together, refusing to let fear control them. Nia knew this was a crucial moment. The trickster was growing desperate, and the final challenge was drawing near. That evening, a strange and unsettling event occurred. As the sun set and the villagers looked up at the night sky, they saw that the stars were gone. The sky, which had always been full of twinkling lights, was now a vast, empty darkness. The villagers gasped in fear, wondering if the gods had abandoned them. Even Nia, who had always drawn strength from the stars, felt a chill in her heart. But she quickly reminded herself of the gods' words. "The answer is within," she whispered. "The stars may be hidden, but their light is still there." Nia addressed the village, urging them not to be afraid. "The trickster wants us to believe that we are alone," she said. "But we are not. The light of the stars lives within each of us. It is in our kindness, our unity, and our love for one another. We must keep that light alive, even when we cannot see it." Determined to find out what had caused the stars to disappear, Nia set out once more, this time heading into the darkest part of the forest. She believed the trickster was hiding there, weaving his illusions to make the people lose hope. As she ventured deeper into the shadows, the air grew colder, and the trees seemed to close in around her. But Nia kept walking, her heart steady. In the distance, she saw a faint light flickering. As she approached, she realized it was the trickster, sitting on a rock, holding the glowing star stone in his hands. "So you've come for your precious stone?" he sneered. "But do you really think it will help you now? The stars are gone, and soon your village will fall to despair." Nia stood before the trickster, unafraid. "The stone was never the source of my strength," she said, her voice calm. "It was a gift, a reminder of the light within me. You can take the stone, but you cannot take my heart or my faith." The trickster laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. "We shall see, little one. If you are so confident, then face me in a final challenge." Nia nodded, knowing this was the moment she had been preparing for. The trickster's power lay in deception, but Nia had learned to see through his illusions. "What is your challenge?" she asked. The trickster smiled, his eyes gleaming. "You must pass through the Valley of Shadows, where the darkest fears of your heart will come to life. Only then will you truly understand the strength of your light." The Valley of Shadows lay beyond the forest, a place where few dared to go. It was said that the valley held the deepest fears of those who entered, manifesting them as real and terrifying illusions. Nia knew this would be her greatest test, but she also knew that the gods had prepared her for this moment. With the villagers' trust in her heart, she began the journey into the valley. The air grew thick as Nia stepped into the valley, and a deep fog rolled in, obscuring her view. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, and strange whispers echoed around her. But Nia kept walking, her mind focused on the light within her. "These are just shadows," she reminded herself. "They have no power over me unless I let them." As Nia walked deeper into the valley, the first of her fears appeared. Before her stood a vision of her village, but it was in ruins. The river was dry, the fields were barren, and the people were gone. "This is what awaits you," a voice whispered. "Your efforts will fail, and all that you love will be destroyed." For a moment, Nia felt a pang of sorrow and fear. The vision was so real, so convincing. But then she remembered the kindness and strength of her people, the unity they had shown in the face of hardship. "This is not the truth," she said aloud. "The future is not written, and we will overcome this together." As she spoke, the vision dissolved, and the shadow faded into the mist. As Nia pressed forward in the Valley of Shadows, a cold wind swept through, and the fog thickened around her. Suddenly, she heard soft voices, familiar yet filled with doubt. Ahead of her appeared figures she recognized as the villagers of Usoma. But they looked different, their faces twisted in anger and disappointment. "You failed us, Nia," they whispered. "The drought returned, the stars have vanished. You promised us hope, but all is lost." Nia's heart ached as the figures accused her. Their words cut deep, but she knew this was another trick of the valley. These shadows were not her people, but her own fears given form. She took a deep breath, remembering the love and trust the villagers had shown her. "The real Usoma is strong, and they believe in me, just as I believe in them," she said. "We have faced hardship before, and we will face it again with kindness in our hearts." The shadowy figures faded, and the wind calmed as Nia's strength grew. The further Nia ventured into the valley, the heavier the air became, and the more oppressive the shadows around her grew. It was as though the valley itself was trying to crush her spirit, but Nia kept walking, determined not to give in. After what felt like hours, she came to a clearing. In the middle of it stood a large mirror, reflecting the fog and shadows around her. But when she looked into it, she didn't see herself as she was. Instead, she saw a version of herself consumed by darkness, her face cold and distant, her eyes filled with anger. This vision unnerved her. It was a reflection of her deepest fear, the fear that one day she might lose her light, that her heart might be tainted by the same darkness that plagued the trickster. The figure in the mirror seemed to taunt her, whispering, "You think you are different from the trickster? You too could fall to doubt, to selfishness. How long can you really hold on to your kindness?" Nia felt a moment of doubt, but then she remembered all that she had learned, the wisdom the gods had given her. Kindness is not a weakness, and it is not something that fades with time. It is a choice, one I make every day, she said firmly. I may have doubts, but they will never define me. The reflection in the mirror shattered, and Nia moved on, her resolve stronger than ever. The valley began to shift again, and the shadows around Nia grew darker. The path ahead was no longer clear, and she felt as though she was walking deeper into the unknown. Then, out of the mist, appeared her parents. They stood before her, their faces filled with sorrow. "Nia," her mother said softly, "you are brave, but why do you continue this journey? Come back to us. Stay in the village where it is safe." Her father nodded. "You've done enough. The people will understand if you stop now. No one will blame you." Nia's heart tightened. Her parents had always been her greatest source of support, and seeing them ask her to give up was almost too much to bear. But deep down, she knew this was not real. It was the valley's final test, a trick designed to pull her away from her path. "I love you both," Nia whispered, "but I know my purpose. I cannot stop now. My village needs me, and I will not let fear guide my decisions." As she spoke these words, the images of her parents faded, and the shadows began to lift. The path ahead was now clear, and Nia knew that she was close to facing the trickster. At the end of the Valley of Shadows, Nia found herself standing before a great stone archway. Beyond it lay a small, eerie clearing, lit by the faint glow of the moon. There, seated on a throne made of twisted roots and vines, was the trickster. His smile was no longer playful but sinister, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You've come far, Nia," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "But you're too late. Your village is already beginning to lose hope. The stars are gone, and soon your people will follow." Nia stepped forward, unafraid. "The stars may be hidden, but the light they represent still shines. You cannot take away the kindness in our hearts, no matter how hard you try." The trickster sneered, rising from his throne. "And what makes you so certain? What power do you have that can stand against me?" Nia smiled softly. "The power of love, the power of unity, and the power of belief in something greater than ourselves. You cannot take that from us." The trickster snarled, sensing that his power over her was slipping. The trickster lashed out, summoning a wave of darkness that surged toward Nia, threatening to engulf her. But Nia stood firm, her heart glowing with the light of all she had learned. "You can send as many shadows as you like," she said, her voice steady, "but I will not give in to fear." The darkness swirled around her, but it could not penetrate the shield of light that emanated from her heart. The trickster, growing desperate, tried to cloud her mind with visions of failure and despair. He showed her a future where the village crumbled and the people turned against her. But Nia had learned to see through his illusions. "These are nothing but tricks," she said. "You have no real power over me or my village. We have faced hardship before, and we will rise again." The trickster's form began to waver, his strength weakening as Nia's light grew brighter. She had faced her deepest fears and emerged stronger. Now, it was the trickster who was afraid. Realizing that he could no longer control Nia, the trickster let out a final, frustrated cry. "You may have won this time, Nia, but the shadows will always return. There will always be darkness, and one day you will falter." Nia met his gaze calmly. "There may always be darkness, but as long as we remember the light within us, we will never be lost. Your power ends here." With those words, Nia raised her hands, and a brilliant light erupted from her heart, filling the clearing with a glow so bright that the trickster could not bear to look. He screamed, dissolving into the very shadows he had once controlled. The light grew stronger, spreading beyond the valley, and Nia knew that she had won. The trickster's hold over the village was broken, and the darkness that had threatened them for so long had been vanquished. As Nia stepped out of the Valley of Shadows, the sky above her began to clear. One by one, the stars reappeared, twinkling brightly in the night sky. Their light was more brilliant than ever, a symbol of hope and renewal. Nia smiled, knowing that the gods had rewarded her faith and courage. She had faced the trickster's challenges and emerged victorious, not through violence or hatred, but through kindness and belief in the goodness of her people. The village of Usoma greeted her with cheers and tears of joy. The elders embraced her, and the villagers knelt before her in gratitude. "The stars have returned because of you, Nia," they said. But Nia shook her head. The stars never left. They were always there, waiting for us to find the light within ourselves. That night, as the villagers celebrated, Nia stood quietly at the edge of the river, looking up at the stars. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her journey had not only saved her village, but had also taught her the true meaning of strength. "Thank you," she whispered to the stars, "for guiding me, for reminding me that the light within is stronger than any darkness." And then, in the stillness of the night, she heard the voice of the goddess Marimba once more. "You have done well, Nia. Your heart is pure, and your kindness has saved your people. But now, it is time for you to take your place among the stars. For you are no longer just a girl of the village. You are a guardian of light, a guide for all who face the darkness." In that moment, Nia felt a warmth surround her. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, and the air around her shimmered with a soft glow. She closed her eyes, feeling her spirit lift, as if she were being drawn toward the heavens. "I will always watch over you, my people," she whispered, her heart full of love for Usoma. Slowly, her body began to change, becoming lighter and brighter. The villagers, seeing the light emanating from Nia, gathered in awe. "Look," they cried, "she is becoming one with the stars." And indeed, Nia's form grew luminous, her spirit rising into the sky. As the light enveloped her, she transformed into a radiant star, joining the constellation that watched over the village. High in the night sky, Nia took her place among the stars, her light shining brightly for all to see. The villagers gazed up in wonder, knowing that she would always be with them, guiding them through the darkest of times. From that day forward, Nia's star was known as the Star of Hope, and whenever the people of Usoma looked to the heavens, they knew that she was watching over them, offering her wisdom and love. The village flourished under Nia's guiding light, and her story was passed down through generations. Mothers told their children about the girl who became a star, a reminder that kindness, courage, and unity could overcome any darkness. Nia's star became a symbol of hope for not just Usoma, but for all who looked up at the night sky, knowing that even in the darkest times, the light within could always shine through. With Nia's transformation into the Star of Hope, the village of Usoma entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The river flowed steadily, the crops grew bountifully, and the people lived in harmony, guided by Nia's shining light in the night sky. The villagers honored her memory every evening, gathering by the river to sing songs of gratitude and tell stories of her bravery, kindness, and sacrifice. But beyond the surface of prosperity, the village was forever changed. Nia's example had taught them that their greatest strength came from within, their unity, their kindness, and their unwavering faith in one another. The elders often reminded the younger generations of Nia's journey, ensuring her legacy of selflessness and courage was passed on. As the village thrived, the people of Usoma knew that, no matter the challenge, they would always have Nia's light to guide them. A year after Nia's ascension into the heavens, the villagers of Usoma decided to celebrate her memory with a grand festival, which they called the Festival of Stars. The festival would mark the night of her transformation, and it would become an annual event to remind the people of her eternal presence. The villagers decorated their homes with lanterns and adorned the streets with shimmering fabrics, all designed to reflect the starlight. As night fell, the villagers gathered in the square, their eyes fixed on Nia's star high above. They danced and sang beneath her glow, offering thanks for the blessings she had brought to their village. Children wore crowns made of silver leaves to mimic the stars, and the elders shared stories of Nia's journey through the Valley of Shadows. It was a night of joy and remembrance, a celebration of the light that Nia had brought to their lives. On the night of the first Festival of Stars, something remarkable happened. As the villagers sang beneath the sky, a soft, shimmering light began to descend from Nia's star. It floated down like a gentle mist, wrapping the village in a warm, golden glow. The people stood in awe, feeling the presence of Nia as though she were with them once again. The crops seemed to flourish under the light, the animals became calm, and even the river sparkled as it flowed. The elders believed this to be a gift from Nia, a sign that she was still watching over them, blessing the village from the heavens. From that night onward, the Festival of Stars became not only a celebration of Nia's memory, but also a time when her divine blessings would renew the village, filling them with hope and love for the year to come. News of the mysterious light from the Star of Hope spread beyond Usoma, reaching distant villages and towns. One day, a traveler arrived in Usoma, a wise woman named Zuri, who had heard of Nia's legend. She was an elder from a faraway land, known for her knowledge of the stars and the ancient stories of the gods. She had come to see for herself the village that had been blessed by a star. Zuri was welcomed warmly by the villagers, and she spent many days listening to their stories about Nia. As she stood by the river one evening, watching Nia's star, she smiled and said to the elders, "The gods have truly blessed you, but this light does not only belong to your village. It is meant for all who seek hope. Nia's spirit is powerful, and her story will inspire people far beyond your borders." Zuri's words struck a chord with the elders, and they realized that Nia's message of kindness and unity should not be kept only within Usoma. They decided to spread her story to other villages and invite travelers to the Festival of Stars. Messengers were sent to distant lands, sharing the tale of the girl who had become a star, and inviting others to join in the celebration. Soon, people from all over began to visit Usoma, eager to learn about Nia's journey and bask in the glow of her star. The village became a place of pilgrimage, where people could come to find peace, wisdom, and hope. Nia's stories spread far and wide, inspiring acts of kindness in other villages. Those who visited Usoma left with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the light of Nia's star back to their homes. One night, during the Festival of Stars, a young girl from a neighboring village had a dream. In her dream, Nia appeared before her, her form bathed in starlight. "You have a kind heart," Nia said softly, "and you will one day lead your people, just as I have. But remember, the greatest power you have is the ability to bring others together, to guide them with love and compassion." When the girl awoke, she told her parents about the dream, and word spread through the village. The elders believed this was another sign from Nia, showing that her light was not only meant to guide Usoma, but to inspire the next generation of leaders. From that day, it became known that those who dreamed of Nia were chosen to carry her spirit of kindness, to act as beacons of hope in their own lands. As the years passed, more and more people began to dream of Nia, receiving guidance and wisdom from her light. These dreamers were often children, whose hearts were pure and unclouded by doubt. They would wake with a sense of purpose, feeling as though they had been touched by the stars themselves. The elders of Usoma welcomed these dreamers, teaching them the values that Nia had lived by: kindness, courage, and the power of unity. Soon, villages far and wide began to recognize the wisdom of the stars. They created schools dedicated to teaching Nia's lessons, and people came from great distances to learn. Nia's influence spread across the land, her spirit living on in the actions of those who followed her example. One year, during the Festival of Stars, a young boy named Tunde arrived in Usoma. He had journeyed alone from a village far to the east, following the glow of Nia's star. Tunde was quiet and humble, but there was something special about him. The villagers welcomed him warmly, and soon he began to spend time with the elders, learning all he could about Nia's journey. One evening, as Tunde sat by the river, he had a vision. Nia's star shone brighter than ever, and in the light, he saw Nia herself. "You have been called to protect your people," she said. The world will always face darkness, but with your kind heart, you can be a light for others. Tunde awoke with a sense of purpose. He knew that, like Nia, he was destined to become a guardian of light, guiding his people through the challenges that lay ahead. Tunde spent several more weeks in Usoma, learning the ways of the village and understanding the depth of Nia's teachings. The elders saw great potential in him and knew that he had been chosen by the stars, just as Nia had. "You are destined to bring hope to your people," one of the elders told him. "Your journey will be different from Nia's, but the light you carry will shine just as bright." With the blessings of the village, Tunde set off on his journey back to his homeland, ready to bring Nia's teachings to his own village. Along the way, he encountered others who were lost or in need of guidance. Tunde's compassion and wisdom touched everyone he met, and soon he became known as a healer and leader, someone who carried the light of the stars with him wherever he went. As the years passed, Nia's star continued to shine brightly, and her legacy spread further than anyone could have imagined. The Festival of Stars became an annual tradition in villages across the land, each one celebrating the light of hope and unity that Nia had brought into the world. Travelers from all corners of the earth came to Usoma to see the place where the girl who became a star had once lived. The village itself thrived, not just in prosperity, but in spirit. The people of Usoma were known for their generosity, their willingness to help others, and their deep connection to the stars. Nia's story had taught them that true strength came from within, and that even in the face of darkness, there was always a way to find the light. Years passed, and Nia's light continued to guide the people of Usoma and far beyond. Children grew up hearing stories of her bravery, kindness, and the powerful light she had become in the sky. Many of them dreamed of Nia, seeing her in visions that brought wisdom and hope. These dreamers, like the girl and Tunde before them, felt called to follow in her footsteps, spreading her message of unity, courage, and love. Among this new generation was a young girl named Zola. She had always felt a special connection to the stars, and every night she would sit by the river, gazing at Nia's bright glow. One night, during the Festival of Stars, Zola had a vivid dream. In it, Nia spoke to her. "Zola, the world is full of those who need guidance. You have the heart to be a light for them, just as I was for Usoma. But remember, the journey ahead will not be easy." When Zola awoke, she knew her life had changed. Like Tunde before her, she was destined to carry Nia's light to new places. Zola, filled with determination, sought the advice of the village elders. They saw in her the same fire that had once burned within Nia, and they blessed her journey. Zola set off into the world, traveling to distant villages where droughts, conflict, and fear had taken hold. She remembered Nia's teachings, that the real power of light came not from the stars in the sky, but from the kindness and compassion we show one another. As she traveled, Zola shared Nia's story and helped those in need. In one village, where crops had withered, Zola taught the people how to work together, pooling their resources to survive the dry season. In another, she helped bring peace between rival clans by reminding them that unity was the source of strength. Slowly, Zola's efforts began to spread, and her name became known as another beacon of hope, following in Nia's footsteps. One day, Zola arrived at a village that had once been prosperous, but had fallen into despair after a series of misfortunes. The villagers were divided, blaming each other for their problems. The river that once provided them with water had dried up, and the people were desperate. Some spoke of abandoning the village, while others wanted to turn to harsh measures to protect what little they had left. Zola listened to their arguments, her heart heavy with sorrow. She knew that this was a place where the trickster's influence had returned, not in the form of illusions, but in the seeds of doubt and fear that had taken root in the villagers' hearts. She decided to stay and help, knowing that, just like in Usoma, kindness and unity were the only solutions. Zola gathered the village together and told them the story of Nia and the Valley of Shadows. She spoke of how Nia had faced the trickster's games and defeated him not by force, but by holding on to her belief in the power of unity and love. "The light within each of you is stronger than any fear or doubt," Zola said. "You can rebuild this village, but only if you do it together." At first, some were hesitant, too entrenched in their anger and mistrust to believe that unity could save them. But Zola's words began to reach them, slowly. She worked alongside the villagers, showing them how to share their resources and rebuild their irrigation systems. Little by little, they began to see that when they worked as one, they could overcome the challenges they faced. After many weeks of hard work, something miraculous happened. One morning, as the villagers gathered near the dried-up riverbed, a small trickle of water began to flow. It was weak at first, but as the hours passed, the trickle grew into a stream, and soon the river was flowing steadily once more. The people were overjoyed, and they knew that it was their renewed unity that had brought this blessing. Zola smiled as she watched the villagers celebrate. She knew that this was Nia's light at work, guiding her and the people to overcome their struggles. "The gods are watching over you," she told them, "but it is your hearts that have brought this water back." The village was restored, and the people, now filled with hope, vowed to never again let fear and division take root among them. After her time in the broken village, Zola continued her journey. Her travels led her to a distant land, known for its strong winds and barren hills. The people of this land lived in scattered communities, each struggling to survive the harsh conditions. Zola sensed that this was a place where Nia's light was needed, and she decided to stay and help. The villagers welcomed her, though they were skeptical that anyone could change their fortunes. The wind, they said, was too strong, and the land too poor for crops. Many had already left in search of better lands, but Zola believed that even in this desolate place there was hope. She began working with the villagers, teaching them how to harness the wind's power to irrigate their fields and build shelters that could withstand the storms. One night, as Zola lay under the stars, she heard a soft whisper carried on the wind. At first, she thought it was just the breeze, but as she listened more closely, she realized it was the voice of Nia. "You are doing well, Zola," the voice said, "but remember, the greatest challenge lies not in changing the land, but in changing the hearts of the people." The next day, Zola spoke to the villagers about what she had heard. "The wind may be fierce, but it carries messages if you listen closely," she said. "Just as the wind shapes the land, we must let it shape our hearts. We cannot fight against nature, but we can work with it, just as we must work together to thrive." Inspired by Zola's words, the villagers began to listen to the wind in a new way. They realized that the wind, though harsh, was also a source of life. By building windmills and capturing the wind's energy, they could power their homes and irrigate their crops. Slowly, the barren hills began to turn green, and the village prospered in ways they had never thought possible. Zola, watching the transformation, knew that the true change had come from the villagers themselves. By trusting in one another and finding strength in their unity, they had turned the wind into a blessing. The village became known as the Village of the Winds, a place where Zola's teachings, rooted in Nia's light, had brought new life to the land. Back in Usoma, the people continued to thrive under Nia's guiding light. Every year, during the Festival of Stars, they would gather to celebrate the blessings they had received and honor Nia's memory. But one year, as the festival began, the villagers noticed something. Zola smiled as she watched the villagers celebrate. She knew that this was Nia's light at work, guiding her and the people to overcome their struggles. "The gods are watching over you," she told them, "but it is your hearts that have brought this water back." The village was restored, and the people, now filled with hope, vowed to never again let fear and division take root among them. After her time in the broken village, Zola continued her journey. Her travels led her to a distant land, known for its strong winds and barren hills. The people of this land lived in scattered communities, each struggling to survive the harsh conditions. Zola sensed that this was a place where Nia's light was needed, and she decided to stay and help. The villagers welcomed her, though they were skeptical that anyone could change their fortunes. The wind, they said, was too strong, and the land too poor for crops. Many had already left in search of better lands, but Zola believed that even in this desolate place there was hope. She began working with the villagers, teaching them how to harness the wind's power to irrigate their fields and build shelters that could withstand the storms. One night, as Zola lay under the stars, she heard a soft whisper carried on the wind. At first, she thought it was just the breeze, but as she listened more closely, she realized it was the voice of Nia. "You are doing well, Zola," the voice said. "But remember, the greatest challenge lies not in changing the land, but in changing the hearts of the people." The next day, Zola spoke to the villagers about what she had heard. "The wind may be fierce, but it carries messages if you listen closely," she said. "Just as the wind shapes the land, we must let it shape our hearts. We cannot fight against nature, but we can work with it, just as we must work together to thrive." Inspired by Zola's words, the villagers began to listen to the wind in a new way. They realized that the wind, though harsh, was also a source of life. By building windmills and capturing the wind's energy, they could power their homes and irrigate their crops. Slowly, the barren hills began to turn green, and the village prospered in ways they had never thought possible. Zola, watching the transformation, knew that the true change had come from the villagers themselves. By trusting in one another and finding strength in their unity, they had turned the wind into a blessing. The village became known as the Village of the Winds, a place where Zola's teachings, rooted in Nia's light, had brought new life to the land. Back in Usoma, the people continued to thrive under Nia's guiding light. Every year, during the Festival of Stars, they would gather to celebrate the blessings they had received and honor Nia's memory. But one year, as the festival began, the villagers noticed something, the land, but by uniting the people. You must help them see that even in the desert, there is life. When Lawazi awoke, he knew that he had been chosen to lead his people toward a brighter future. Determined to follow Nia's guidance, Lawazi approached the village elders with a bold idea. "We are stronger together," he said. "We must stop living in isolation and join with other villages to share resources. The desert may be vast, but if we seek out new allies, we can find water, food, and hope beyond these sands." The elders were hesitant at first, for they had lived in the desert for generations and believed it was their only home. But Lawazi's dream had stirred something in them, and they agreed to let him lead an expedition to seek help from neighboring villages. Lawazi gathered a group of brave villagers and set off across the desert, guided by the stars. The journey was difficult, the heat relentless, but Lawazi remained focused on Nia's words. After days of travel, they reached a village near the desert's edge, where the people greeted them warmly. Lawazi shared Nia's story, and the villagers, inspired by the light of her star, agreed to help. They provided water and supplies for Lawazi's village, promising to work together in the future. When Lawazi and his group returned to their village with the supplies and the promise of new allies, the villagers were overjoyed. For the first time, they realized that they did not have to face the harshness of the desert alone. Lawazi, inspired by Nia's vision, encouraged them to work together to build irrigation systems and to share the resources they had gathered from the nearby village. Over time, the village transformed. The once dry and barren land began to bloom with life. Crops were planted in newly irrigated fields, and the people, no longer isolated, found strength in their connection to neighboring communities. The village became a hub for trade and collaboration, thriving under the guidance of Lawazi and the teachings of Nia. The people began to believe that even in the desert, life could flourish with unity and hope. Inspired by Lawazi's success, the people of the desert village decided to celebrate their new bonds with neighboring communities by creating their own version of the Festival of Stars. They called it the Festival of Light, a tribute not only to Nia's star, but to the light that lived within each person who sought to bring hope to their people. The festival took place on the night when the desert sky was clearest, and Nia's star shone brightly over the sands. Villagers from far and wide gathered for the festival, sharing stories, music, and food under the glowing starlight. They built large bonfires that symbolized the light of unity, and together, they danced around the flames, giving thanks for the blessings they had received. Lawazi, standing beneath Nia's star, felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that his journey, like Nia's, had only just begun. There was still so much more to do, so many more people who needed hope. Word of Lawazi's work in the desert spread, and soon people from distant lands began to seek him out, much like they had once done with Nia. Among them was a woman named Ayana, a wanderer who had traveled from the snowy peaks of the north, where her village had long struggled against the cold. Ayana had heard the stories of Nia and Lawazi, and she believed that the teachings of the Star of Hope could bring warmth and unity to her own people. Ayana and Lawazi quickly formed a bond, recognizing in each other the same dedication to spreading Nia's light. Ayana shared the challenges her village faced, not from drought like Lawazi's people, but from the isolation and bitterness that the endless winters had brought. "In my village, people have forgotten how to help one another," Ayana said sadly. "They believe that survival means looking out only for themselves." Lawazi, knowing the power of Nia's teachings, agreed to help her. Ayana and Lawazi set off together toward her village in the frozen north. The journey was long and treacherous, but Lawazi, ever mindful of Nia's guidance, remained optimistic. "No matter how cold the land may be," he told Ayana, "the warmth of the heart is enough to bring people together." As they traveled, they shared stories of Nia and the power of unity, knowing that the lessons they carried would help transform Ayana's village. When they finally arrived at the snowy peaks, Ayana's village was a harsh place. The people were closed off, wary of outsiders, and even suspicious of one another. The cold had hardened their hearts over time. But Lawazi and Ayana began to talk to them, telling stories of Nia and the unity that had saved villages across the land. Slowly, the people began to listen, their curiosity piqued by the tales of hope and kindness. As Lawazi and Ayana spent time in the frozen village, they noticed small changes. The villagers, once reluctant to share their resources, began to come together in small ways. A family that had hoarded firewood for fear of the long winter gave some to their neighbors. A fisherman, known for keeping his catch to himself, started offering fish to the elders of the village. The warmth of unity was beginning to thaw the cold hearts of the people. Ayana, encouraged by these signs, told the villagers about the Festival of Stars. "It is a time when we remember that the stars above are a symbol of the light within us," she said. "If we gather together and share our strength, we can make it through even the harshest winters." The villagers agreed to hold a festival, and for the first time in many years, they prepared a celebration that involved the whole community. On the night of the festival, the village was covered in a fresh layer of snow, but the sky was clear, and Nia's star shone brightly above the snowy peaks. The villagers gathered in the square, lighting small lanterns to hold against the cold. As the lanterns glowed, their soft light reflected off the snow, creating a breathtaking scene. It was as if the whole village was bathed in the warmth of the stars. Ayana and Lawazi stood together, watching as the villagers, once so divided, now sang and laughed together, sharing stories and warmth. "The stars have brought us together," one elder said, "but it is the kindness we show each other that will keep us united." The festival continued long into the night, and the village, once hardened by cold, had been transformed into a place of hope and unity. The morning after the festival, something extraordinary happened. As the villagers woke and stepped outside, they found the snow glistening in the sunlight, as if the land itself had been blessed. The cold, though still present, felt less harsh, and the air was filled with a sense of peace. The villagers, inspired by the festival, began to work together to prepare for the rest of the winter. They shared food, firewood, and stories, knowing that their unity would see them through the toughest months. Ayana smiled as she watched her village transform. "The light of Nia has reached even the coldest places," she said to Lawazi. "She has shown us that no matter how harsh the world may seem, there is always a way to find warmth and hope." Lawazi nodded, feeling a deep connection to the journey they had shared. Together, they had brought Nia's teachings to yet another place in need of her light. As Ayana's village flourished, news of her and Lawazi's work reached the far corners of the land. Other dreamers, inspired by their stories, began to emerge. These dreamers, all guided by visions of Nia, came together in a gathering that would become known as the Council of the Stars. They met in Usoma, the village where Nia's journey had begun, and shared their experiences of spreading her light. The Council of the Stars became a powerful force for good, guiding villages through hardship and teaching the values of kindness, unity, and resilience. Each dreamer had their own unique journey, but they were united by the same purpose: to keep Nia's light shining brightly in the hearts of all people, no matter where they lived or what challenges they faced. With the Council of the Stars in place, villages across the land became more connected than ever before. No longer isolated by their struggles, they worked together, sharing resources, knowledge, and support. Nia's story, once a legend told in a single village, had now spread to every corner of the world. Her light had united people from the snowy peaks to the desert sands, from the great forests to the wide plains. The world had been transformed not by force or wealth, but by the simple power of kindness and unity. Nia's star continued to shine brightly in the sky, a symbol of hope and guidance for all who looked up. And the dreamers, who carried her message in their hearts, knew that as long as they remembered her teachings, the world would always have light, even in its darkest moments.
The Brave Hunter and the
For
Magical
many
Drum.
years, the world flourished under the guidance of Nia's light and the unity fostered by the Council of the Stars. Villages grew prosperous, and people lived in harmony. But in a distant land, far from Usoma and the places touched by Nia's teachings, a new shadow began to rise. This shadow was not caused by the trickster spirit, but by a group of people who had forgotten the importance of unity and kindness. Led by a powerful chieftain named Bahati, this group believed in ruling through fear and strength rather than through love and cooperation. Bahati had heard of Nia's legacy, but scoffed at the idea of kindness as power. He sought to build an empire, conquering villages one by one and forcing people to submit to his
Kofi
rule.
spent several
The
sleepless
peaceful
nights.
villages that had thrived under Nia's light now faced a new threat, a force that sought to divide them once more. News of Bahati's conquests spread quickly, reaching the ears of the Council of the Stars. The dreamers, including Zola, Lawazi, and Ayana, gathered once more in Usoma to discuss how they could respond to this growing darkness. They knew that fighting Bahati with force would only lead to more division and suffering, but they also could not stand by while villages were torn apart. Lawazi spoke first. "We must confront Bahati with the same strength that Nia taught us. Strength through unity, not violence. His heart is hardened, but perhaps
Kofi
we can
bowed his
show
head
him that true power lies in bringing people together, not in ruling them through fear." The other dreamers agreed, but they knew that reaching Bahati would be difficult. His army was large, and his influence was spreading. Ayana, who had learned the power of patience and understanding in her frozen village, suggested that they begin by visiting the villages Bahati had conquered, reminding the people of Nia's message and restoring their hope. "If we can rekindle their belief in unity," she said, "we may be able to stand against Bahati without lifting a single weapon." With their plan in place, the dreamers set out on a journey to the west, where Bahati's empire was growing. Along the way, they stopped in the villages that had been conquered, speaking to the people about Nia's light and the power of unity. In many places, they found fear and despair. Bahati's rule had divided families and weakened the bonds of trust that had once held the villages together. Zola, Lawazi, and Ayana worked tirelessly to remind the villagers of their strength. They spoke of how Nia had faced the trickster spirit and overcome him through her belief in kindness and unity. Slowly, the people began to listen. The dreamers encouraged them to rebuild their connections with one another, to support each other in small acts of kindness. Even in the face of Bahati's rule, the villagers started to find hope again. As the dreamers continued their journey, word of their efforts reached Bahati. The chieftain, angered by their message of unity, sent a warning to them. "You cannot stop my rise to power," he declared. "Your dreams and stories are weak in the face of real strength. The people follow me because they know that fear and force are the only ways to survive." Bahati's soldiers delivered this message to the dreamers as they arrived at another village under his control. But the dreamers were undeterred. Zola stood before Bahati's soldiers and replied, "True strength does not come from fear. It comes from love and the bonds we share with one another. The people follow you because they are afraid, but fear cannot last. We will continue to spread Nia's light, and no matter how much darkness you bring, it will never extinguish the flame of hope." As the dreamers made their way to the village of Winds, which had once thrived under Zola's guidance, they found that Bahati's influence had already reached its borders. The villagers, who had learned to harness the power of the wind, now faced the threat of being forced under Bahati's rule. But they were not the same people who had once lived in isolation. Zola's teachings had taught them the value of unity, and they stood together, determined to resist. When Bahati's soldiers arrived demanding that the village submit, the people of the village of Winds refused. They gathered in the square, led by Zola, and held a festival to honor Nia's star. "We will not bow to fear," they chanted. "We are one, and our unity is our strength." The wind, which had always been a powerful force in the village, seemed to join their resistance, howling through the streets and driving Bahati's soldiers away. Infuriated by the growing resistance, Bahati himself decided to confront the dreamers. He rode into the village of Winds, his army at his back, determined to show the people that their hope was misplaced. "I have heard of your star, Nia," Bahati said, standing before Zola and the other dreamers. "But stars are distant, and they do not change the world. Power changes the world. Strength and fear are what keep people in line. If you truly believe that your unity can stand against me, prove it." Zola, calm and composed, looked Bahati in the eyes. "We do not need to prove anything. Our strength comes from the bonds we share, not from the desire to conquer. Nia's star may be distant, but her light reaches all of us, just as the light within us reaches one another. You believe in power, Bahati, but power without love is hollow." Bahati, unwilling to accept the dreamer's words, issued a challenge. "Let us see whose strength is greater. I will leave your village untouched for 1 month. In that time, if you can unite the villages I have conquered and prove that your message of hope is stronger than my rule, I will leave you in peace. But if you fail, you will submit to my empire, and your dreams will be crushed." The dreamers knew that this was a dangerous gamble, but they accepted Bahati's challenge. "We will not fight you with weapons," Lawazi said, "but we will fight for the hearts of the people. In 1 month, you will see that fear cannot stand against unity." Bahati, confident in his power, agreed, and he rode away, giving the dreamers the time they had requested. With only a month to unite the villages under Bahati's rule, the dreamers wasted no time. They traveled from village to village, reminding the people of Nia's teachings and the strength that came from working together. They spoke of how the villages had once thrived when they supported each other, and how Bahati's rule had divided them, making them weaker in the long run. Zola, Lawazi, and Ayana worked tirelessly, speaking to elders, children, and families about the importance of standing together. Slowly, the people began to understand that their survival did not depend on Bahati's protection, but on their ability to rely on one another. The dreamers encouraged the villagers to rebuild the connections they had lost, to share their resources, and to resist the fear that Bahati had spread. As the month drew to a close, the dreamers returned to the village of Winds, where they awaited Bahati's return. But they were not alone. One by one, the villages that had been conquered under Bahati's rule began to send representatives, each carrying symbols of unity, bundles of food, woven fabrics, and even letters of peace. They came together to show that they had chosen unity over fear. When Bahati arrived with his army, he was met with a sight he had not expected. The people of the villages stood side by side, united not by force but by love and trust in one another. "We stand together," the villagers chanted, their voices echoing through the wind. "We will not bow to fear." Bahati, seeing the strength of their unity, was stunned. He realized that no amount of power or force could break the bonds that the dreamers had built. For the first time in his life, Bahati felt a doubt creep into his heart. He had always believed that strength came from control, but now he saw that the dreamers had created something far more powerful, an unbreakable bond between the people. "What you have done here is impressive," Bahati said, his voice quieter than before. "But how long will it last? How can you be sure that this unity won't crumble when the next hardship comes?" Ayana stepped forward. "Our unity is not built on fear, Bahati. It is built on kindness, on trust, and on the belief that we are stronger together. Hardships will come, but we will face them as one. That is the difference between your rule and ours." Bahati, seeing the sincerity in Ayana's eyes and the strength of the villagers, began to understand the truth of their words. Overwhelmed by the realization that his empire had been built on fear, Bahati knew that he could no longer continue down the path he had chosen. "Perhaps I have been wrong," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I thought that power was the only way to keep people together, but I see now that true strength comes from the heart. I see that Nia's light has shown you a better way." The dreamers watched in amazement as Bahati disbanded his army, releasing the soldiers from their duties and freeing the villages he had conquered. "I will not rule over you any longer," he declared. "From now on, I will learn from you. I will learn how to lead with love, not fear, and perhaps one day I will earn your trust." As Bahati laid down his weapons, something incredible happened. Nia's star, which had always shone brightly in the sky, began to glow even more intensely. The light spread across the land, bathing the villages in a warm, golden glow. The people, seeing the light of Nia, knew that her blessing had been given. The dreamers, filled with hope, understood that they had fulfilled Nia's mission. They had brought unity to a world that had been divided, and they had done so through kindness and love. The villagers gathered beneath the light of Nia's star, singing songs of gratitude and celebrating the peace that had been restored. Bahati, humbled by the experience, stood among them, his heart changed by the power of Nia's legacy. He had seen that the greatest strength of all came not from controlling others, but from working together and spreading light in even the darkest places. With Bahati's empire dissolved, the villages entered a new era of peace. The Council of the Stars continued to guide the people, ensuring that Nia's teachings were passed down to future generations. Bahati, now a student of Nia's light, became a voice for unity, traveling to distant lands and sharing the lessons he had learned from the dreamers. His transformation became a symbol of hope, showing that even the hardest hearts could be softened by love. The dreamers, knowing their work was far from over, continued to travel across the land, helping villages rebuild and reminding people of the importance of kindness and unity. Zola, Luwazi, and Ayana were hailed as heroes, but they remained humble, always giving credit to the light of Nia that had guided them on their journey. As time went on, the story of Nia, the girl who became a star, spread to every corner of the world. Children grew up hearing the tale of how Nia had brought hope and unity to a divided land, and how her dreamers had followed her light to change the world. The Festival of Stars, once celebrated only in Usoma, became a global event, with villages everywhere gathering to honor the light within themselves and the bonds they shared with one another. Nia's star continued to shine brightly in the night sky, a reminder to all who looked up that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always light to be found. Her legacy had become eternal, a guiding force for generations to come. In a small village nestled between the mountains and the sea, a young girl named Amara often gazed at the stars, feeling an unspoken connection to the vast night sky. Though she had never met Zola, Luwazi, or Ayana, their stories had reached her village, filling her heart with dreams of unity and courage. Amara knew the tale of Nia by heart, and every night she whispered prayers to Nia's star, hoping to find her own path in the world. One night, during the Festival of Stars, Amara had a dream unlike any other. In her dream, Nia appeared before her, radiant and full of light. "Amara," Nia said, her voice gentle, "you have a heart full of kindness, and the world needs your light. A time of great change is coming, and you must be ready. Trust in yourself, and know that even when the path is unclear, the stars will always guide you." When Amara awoke, she felt a deep sense of purpose. She knew her time to act had come. Amara's village, though peaceful, was at the edge of a growing conflict. Rumors spread of new warlords rising in distant lands, men who, like Bahati once had, sought to control others through fear and domination. Villages that had thrived under Nia's teachings were now being threatened by these warlords, who saw unity as weakness and sought to return the world to a time of division. The village elders, hearing of these rumors, gathered to discuss how they might protect their people. Amara, though young, spoke up. "We cannot face this darkness alone," she said. "Just as the dreamers united villages before, we must call upon our neighbors, remind them of Nia's light, and stand together." The elders, moved by Amara's passion, agreed to send messengers to nearby villages, hoping to rebuild the alliances that had once protected them. As the messengers traveled to nearby villages, they found that many of the people were afraid. The warlords had begun spreading fear, claiming that unity was a lie and that only the strongest could survive. Some villages had already begun to close their gates, preparing for the worst. Others had lost hope entirely, believing that the light of Nia could no longer protect them from the growing darkness. Amara, seeing the fear spreading through the land, knew she had to act. She gathered a small group of villagers, including her closest friends, and together they set out to visit the nearby villages in person. "We must remind them that Nia's light is still strong," Amara said. "The stars have not dimmed, and neither has the strength we find in one another." The first village Amara and her group visited was known as the Village of Shadows, a place that had once thrived under the teachings of the dreamers, but had now fallen into despair. The people were afraid to leave their homes, and the village square, once full of life, was now silent and empty. The warlords had sent messengers to this village, promising protection in exchange for submission. Amara stood in the center of the village and began to speak. "You are not alone," she called out. "The light of Nia is with you, even in this time of darkness. The warlords may promise safety, but true safety comes from the bonds we share with one another. We must not let fear divide us." Slowly, the villagers began to emerge from their homes, drawn to Amara's words. Some were hesitant, still unsure if they could trust in unity, but others, remembering the lessons of Nia, came forward to offer their support. The people of the Village of Shadows, inspired by Amara's message, decided to stand together once more. They gathered in the square, lighting lanterns in honor of Nia's star and sharing stories of the dreamers who had come before. Amara's words had ignited a spark of hope in their hearts, and they knew that they could not face the coming storm alone. One of the elders of the village approached Amara. "We had forgotten the strength we once shared," he said. "Thank you for reminding us that even in the darkest times, there is always light to be found." Amara smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning. She had much work to do and many more villages to visit. But as the lanterns glowed brightly in the village square, she knew that Nia's light was guiding her. Word of Amara's efforts began to spread, and soon other villages, hearing of her success in the Village of Shadows, began to reach out to her for help. Amara and her group traveled from village to village, sharing Nia's teachings and helping the people rebuild their bonds of trust. As more villages joined the alliance, the fear that the warlords had spread began to dissipate. The people remembered that their true strength lay in unity, not in fear. One day, as Amara and her group arrived at a village near the mountains, they were greeted by a messenger from Zola. "The Council of the Stars has heard of your efforts," the messenger said, "and they wish to offer their support. Zola, Lawazi, and Ayana believe that you are carrying forward Nia's legacy, and they are ready to stand with you." Amara was overjoyed, knowing that the dreamers she had always admired were now by her side. With the support of the Council of the Stars, Amara's alliance grew stronger. Villages that had once been isolated and fearful were now united, working together to prepare for the coming conflict. They shared resources, trained together, and held festivals to keep their spirits high. The warlords, hearing of the growing alliance, began to worry. They had expected the people to submit to their rule, but instead, they were witnessing the power of unity in action. Amara, though still young, became a symbol of hope for the alliance. Her courage and determination reminded the people of Nia's journey, and they looked to her for guidance as the storm drew closer. "We will face this challenge together," Amara said. "Just as Nia faced the trickster spirit, we will stand against the darkness. And just as she did, we will triumph through love and unity." The day finally came when the warlords, determined to crush the alliance, sent their armies to the villages. But Amara and the people were ready. They did not meet the warlords' forces with violence, but with a powerful show of unity. The villagers stood together, hand in hand, their lanterns glowing in the night like the stars above. They sang songs of peace and hope, their voices rising above the clash of swords and shields. The warlords' armies, seeing the strength of the people's unity, began to falter. They had expected fear, but instead, they found courage. They had expected division, but instead, they found solidarity. Slowly, the soldiers began to lay down their weapons, realizing that they could not fight against a force as powerful as the bonds of love and trust that held the people together. With their armies disbanding, the warlords found themselves powerless. Their rule, built on fear and intimidation, crumbled before their eyes. The people of the Alliance, united by Amara's leadership and Nia's teachings, refused to submit. One by one, the warlords were driven away, not by force, but by the realization that they could not control a people who were united by something greater than themselves. Amara stood before the people of the Alliance, her heart filled with gratitude. "You have shown the world that unity is the greatest strength of all," she said. "Nia's light has guided us through this storm, and now we stand together, stronger than ever before." The people cheered, knowing that they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, not through violence, but through the power of love and unity. That night, as the people of the Alliance gathered to celebrate their victory, something miraculous happened. High in the night sky, a new star appeared beside Nia's. It glowed brightly, its light joining Nia's in illuminating the world below. The people, awed by the sight, knew that this was a sign from the gods, a sign that Nia's legacy would live on through those who followed her path. Amara, standing beneath the stars, felt a deep sense of peace. She had fulfilled the dream that Nia had given her, and now her people were safe. But she also knew that her journey was far from over. "The light of the stars will always guide us," she whispered, "and we must continue to carry that light wherever it is needed." As she gazed up at the new star, she smiled, knowing that it was a symbol of the future, a future filled with hope, unity, and the everlasting light of Nia. And so the story of Nia, the girl who became a star, continued to inspire generations to come. Her light, joined by new stars in the sky, became a beacon of hope for all who faced darkness. The world, united by her legacy, flourished in peace and harmony, always reminded that no matter the challenge, the light within us is strong enough to overcome any darkness.